So today we're going to be working on our bobblehead body, and this one here is already bone dry, so it's ready to be fired, but it's also at the most fragile state, so it can be really destroyed quickly. So you can see the difference in the color. This one's perfect, it's moldable, that's what you're going to be getting today, and then before I fire it, that's what it's going to look like. So you're going to need obviously your clay, you're going to need a tool and dowel rod, and then a little water cup. And this water cup has slip water in it, and that will be great for attaching and smoothing out. And then of course a paper towel. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of roll my clay into kind of a cylinder. So it's obviously more rectangular. So I'm just going to roll it. You can tap it on the ends if it's getting too long. And it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? If you have a huge crease like that, well, you might want to kind of rub that out. If it's not even, you can kind of use your thumb to kind of even out areas. And then you will need to roll it, okay? So you don't want it to be too thin because it's got to stand on its own. And you also want it to be wide enough that when we put the dowel rod in to make the tunnel, it will work, okay? So that's a good size. So what I'll do is just take this dowel rod, I'm going to go through the center, push it until I go all the way through the other end, okay? Now, once it's in there, now you're going to roll it, okay? This is going to do two things. One, it's going to kind of smooth out the edges, and two, it's going to make that hole, like the tunnel on the inside, a little bit larger. Get this out of the way. It's going to make it a little bit larger, which is great. So I think it's a good size. Then you just pull that right out. So you should have, you can see right through it. Okay, so you're gonna have a bottom and you're gonna have a top, okay? And the bottom is just, it should be able to stand on its own. If it doesn't stand, you're gonna have to kind of tweak it a little bit. And at the top, we're gonna be adding and making the neck, okay? So it's awfully wide right now, so you're gonna place your pinky inside it. And then you're gonna basically squish the clay, without technical terms, but it is squishing the clay around your finger, okay? And then you're gonna slide your finger out, okay? This is gonna become the neck. Now mine's a little bit rough on the side, so I'm gonna use my finger to kind of push the sides down just so it's nice and even. And what's kind of nice about this, it just naturally forms a neck. Okay, so you just kind of mold it with your fingers. Notice I haven't used any water at all. Okay, make sure I've got some shoulders here. Now I'm going to use a little bit of the slip water. So I'm going to go around the neck. And I always rub it in. Okay, the reason why I always want to rub it in is you want that moisture to kind of go through yours clay, and you don't want it sitting at the top because then you might get a crack or something like that, which obviously we don't want. So if it's shiny, it needs to be rubbed in. Okay, so we have a nice neck for our figure. You can, if you want, kind of pinch at the center if you want like a waistline. And if you, when you pinch it, now I can still see through mine, but if you pinch it and you can't see through it, that's okay. As long as the air can escape from the top and the bottom, you're fine, okay? So I'm good, my air can escape here and here. And also you want that top to be large enough. Let's see, they're a little different. We're gonna be adding a spring in it so that our heads actually bobble. So you need to have a large enough, you can get a spring in. So this one's super small, but that's gonna work. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get some extra clay to add the other details. So I have a piece of clay here. I'm gonna kind of show you how to make an arm. Okay, so whenever you get clay, I generally like to roll it in a ball first. Gives it a nice smooth surface. Then this time I'm gonna use my paper towel because I'm gonna start getting a little bit messier. So I'm just gonna roll it, and since it's just an arm, it should be able to roll pretty easily on the paper towel. If it was too long, you just kind of trim off a little bit, okay? But you have your arm here. So that would be a decent arm. So if I were to just stick it on like this, it would eventually fall off. So you always have to score, and it's kind of creating these hashtags, any area you are going to attach. Okay, so I scored both of those areas. I'm gonna add a little bit of slip water to it, just a little dab. It's like the glue. Then I'm gonna place those two pieces together. Now when I do that, I kind of give it a little push, and what that's doing, it's gonna kind of lock the clay together. And then now I'm just gonna blend it into my original body. So it's kind of seamless. And if you need to use a little water, you can, but notice I always do it first without water. Then you can have the arm straight, you can have the arm kind of bent. This part you don't necessarily have to score, but you can kind of give it a little push on there, and you can use a tool to smooth it out or to add finger marks, fingers, all those little details. And also, you can always paint on details too. So whatever you don't get to, you can paint on. So I've got a nice arm there, okay? I'm gonna show you also how to make a little cape. Also, if you wanna draw clothing on here, you can actually just make impressions with the tool, and that will kind of show where the shirt or dress ends and then the skin begins. You can also, for pants, you can make an impression. And then for little feet, I just usually take my thumb and kind of pull out a little bit of clay. You can add clay too. And then maybe on these, I'm gonna cut that a little bit more. Kind of rotate that. See, I kind of go back and forth. And then best tool I really think is your fingers. And you can kind of smooth it out. So remember, you don't necessarily have to add clay for everything. You can kind of manipulate the clay that you actually have to form a little foot. And then when you do eventually paint it, you'll be able to paint one color here and then one color right up there. Okay, I'm gonna show you how to make like a cape or shirt or something like that as well. So I'm gonna set that aside. This time, since it's gonna be a little longer, I'm just gonna kind of squish it, kind of get my coil started, and then I'm gonna roll it. This is what I did for along here, okay? So I'm just gonna roll it. Notice when it gets a little longer, I kind of spread out my fingers and go to the outside, inside, spread out my fingers. And then for the coil, you want it to be about pencil thickness is a good one, or it could be smaller. You don't need it too thick. Now obviously mine's super long, I'm not gonna need all that, but I'll show you. Let's see. Let me wrap it around, looks like it has a boa constrictor around it. And I can take this, go around the body, all the way up to the other part, cut it. Okay, so right now, I just have the clay just sitting just like this. This is how this one started. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm not gonna score, don't need to score this one, but I am gonna smooth out one side. And you always wanna smooth out the side at the back. This is gonna give you the illusion that you have like something over your little character. And this can be anything. It could be somebody based off of a novel. This can be somebody from your imagination, a movie, you, whatever you want, okay? You can see I've smoothed that out, and I do that all the way around. I'm just gonna kind of show you a little section here. And see how I'm taking my thumb and kind of pressing that. Then I can take my thumb or finger, add some water to it. See how smooth that water makes it? But the thing is, you don't want to add too much water. Too much water is not a good thing. It will cause an erosion problem, and we don't want that. Erosion is bad, but it does smooth things out nicely like that. So now it gives you the illusion that I took basically clay and wrapped it around it without doing that. Because if I were to wrap clay around here, what would most likely happen is I would have like an air pocket, and air pockets, there's no way for it to escape. It's gonna cause an explosion. That's why the top of the neck needs air to escape. The bottom needs somewhere that the air can escape. So you always want to make sure you're careful. So you can add all your little details today. The most important thing is smoothing things out. If you have little areas like this, you see it's very little, but you can imagine that little piece right there, even though it's soft now, when it's fired in the kiln, it's going to be sharp. So just make sure you take your time smoothing things out, and then you're going to stamp the bottom with your initials at the end of the class period, or once you have the main part of the body done, so you don't forget. And you'll be working on this, finishing this up next week, so it's all smooth like this, and then we'll be adding the head.